Captain Elias Kane opened his eyes to darkness, smoke, and silence. His ship, the Resolute, had been torn apart by a sudden ambush in deep space. Most of his crew were gone, scattered into the void. He had ejected in a damaged escape pod, and now he lay on the soil of an unknown planet, weak but alive. The pod had burned through the sky like a falling star before crashing into a wide green valley. Elias struggled to his feet, his uniform scorched and his body aching. Around him, the world was strange and beautiful. The air shimmered faintly, and the sky had two moons glowing high above. The trees were tall, their leaves shining silver as if made of glass. In the distance, he heard the sound of horns. Warning calls, not music. He pulled out his pulse sidearm, the only working weapon he had left, and scanned the area. He expected search teams from his ship, but instead he saw something else. Armored riders approaching on beasts that looked like a mix of horse and lizard. Their armor glimmered with patterns that reminded him of stars. At the center of the group was a young woman in elegant armor, her cloak fluttering in the wind. Even from a distance, Elias could tell she was someone important. Her head was held high and her crown-shaped circlet glowed faintly. Before Elias could decide whether to hide or step forward, the riders were attacked. From the cliffs above, shadowy figures leapt down, armed with curved blades and jagged weapons. The riders shouted and formed a protective circle around the woman, but they were outnumbered. Elias saw hesitation in the guards. They were disciplined, but the attackers were ruthless and fast. The young woman was the target. He could tell by the way the enemies moved toward her. Elias didn't think. He acted. With a shout, he ran into the battle. His weapon barked blue light and one of the attackers fell. The Zarathian guards froze for a heartbeat, shocked at the sudden arrival of a strange warrior. Elias pushed forward, firing again, then swinging the butt of his weapon like a club when the energy cell ran dry. The attackers turned on him, confused by his unfamiliar weapon and reckless courage. Elias dodged a blade, grabbed a fallen spear, and fought with desperate strength. His training as a soldier carried him through the chaos. He was only one man, but his fury drew the enemy's attention away from the princess. The young woman's eyes widened as she saw him fight. For the first time in her life, she saw someone move without fear of death, someone who fought not because of duty or command, but because it was the only choice left. With Elias holding the line, the riders regained courage. They pushed forward, driving the attackers back. The last enemy fell to Elias's spear, and silence filled the valley. Breathing hard, Elias dropped the weapon. His uniform was torn, his arms bruised, but he was alive. The princess approached him, her silver blue eyes locked on his face. "Who are you, stranger?" she asked in a voice both commanding and curious. Elias straightened. "Captain Elias Kane, human from Earth. My ship was destroyed. I don't even know what world this is." The riders exchanged uneasy looks. The princess tilted her head, studying him as though she had never seen anything like him before. "You saved my life," she said softly. "No warrior of our empire has ever fought like that. You are different." One of her guards stepped forward, frowning. "Princess Sirenia, this outsider is dangerous. He carries strange weapons. He should be restrained." Elias raised his hand slowly. "I'm not your enemy. I just saw you under attack. I couldn't stand by." Sirenia's gaze didn't waver. She saw truth in his tired eyes, a kind of honesty her court rarely showed her. After a moment, she lifted her hand to silence her guard. "No," she said firmly. "This man is no threat. He is my savior." The guards hesitated but obeyed. Sirenia turned back to Elias. "You are on Zerath," she explained, "the heart of the Zarathian Empire. My mother, the queen, rules from the capital. You will come with us. She must meet the one who risked his life for her daughter." Elias nodded. He had little choice. His ship was gone and he was alone in a new world. Perhaps this queen would know if there was a way to contact Earth. As the riders mounted their beasts, Sirenia gestured for Elias to ride with her. He climbed onto the creature awkwardly, and she hid a small smile at his clumsy movements. For all his ferocity in battle, he was clearly out of place here. The group rode through the valley, passing villages where people stopped to stare at the human. Whispers followed him. Words he could not understand, but the tone was clear. Suspicion, fear, and curiosity. At last, they reached the shining city of Zarathis. Towers of crystal rose high, glowing with inner light. Bridges of silver stretched between them, and banners rippled in the wind. Elias had seen many colonies and worlds, but nothing so majestic. Inside the palace, he was led through long halls lined with armored statues. Finally, he stood before the queen herself. She was tall, her presence commanding, her crown heavy with jewels. Her eyes were sharper than her daughter's, filled with wisdom and calculation. Serenia stepped forward. "Mother, this is the one who saved me. Without him, I would not be here." The queen studied Elias for a long silence. He felt as though she could see through him, measuring his worth. At last she spoke. "You are not of our kind. Yet you fought as if you were born of fire and steel. No Zarathian guard has ever impressed me so quickly." Elias bowed his head slightly. "I only did what anyone should do." The queen's lips curved in a faint smile. "No, most men would not have. That is why you are different." She leaned back on her throne. "Until I decide your fate, you will remain here. From this day, you will serve as protector to my daughter. You will stand at her side until I release you." Elias stiffened. He had not come here to serve an alien queen, but refusing her now would be unwise, maybe even fatal. He glanced at Serenia, who met his eyes with a mix of gratitude and curiosity. At last, Elias nodded. "Very well. I will protect her." The queen's voice rang with finality. "So it is decided. A stranger from the stars becomes the shield of the princess. May the Empire learn what that means." Elias felt the weight of her words. He had only wanted to survive, but now he stood at the start of something far greater. The fate of an empire, and perhaps more, was shifting around him. Elias Kane's days in the palace began with confusion, followed by exhaustion. The Zarathian Empire was nothing like he had imagined. The city of Zarathus shimmered with towers of crystal, airships that glided silently, and streets filled with creatures of every shape and size. Yet beneath the beauty lay a rigid system of rules, traditions, and hierarchies that made him feel like an outsider in every step. From sunrise to sunset, he trained with the royal guards. His human strength, speed, and battlefield experience made him exceptional, but the guards sneered at his methods. He fought in a way that was chaotic to them, unpredictable. He improvised. He used the terrain. He adapted. "Why do you fight like that?" one guard asked, frustration clear in his voice after Elias had turned a sparring session into a small demonstration of human unpredictability. Elias wiped sweat from his brow. "Because it works. Winning is what matters. Style is for decoration." The guards grumbled but could not deny the results. Even the commander, a stoic woman named Vera, began to take note of his skill. Meanwhile, Princess Serenia's curiosity about Elias deepened. She had always been protected by elite guards, trained to move carefully and speak cautiously. No human had ever walked beside her with such blunt honesty. He spoke his mind, he laughed at danger, and he never bowed to protocol unnecessarily. One afternoon, while walking through the palace gardens, Serenia asked, "Do humans always fight like that?" Elias paused, watching the glowing blossoms sway in the wind.
"No. Most fight for orders, for pride, or for coins."
"I fight because I have to. And sometimes, because I choose to." Serenia smiled faintly. "You are strange, but I like it." Their peaceful conversation was shattered when alarms sounded. Crimson lights flashed along the palace walls and bells echoed through the city. "Intruders!" a guard shouted. Elias grabbed his weapon instinctively. Serenia's eyes widened as she realized the danger was real. From the palace gates, masked attackers poured in. They were fast, precise, and unafraid of the guards. Elias acted first. He threw himself between the attackers and Serenia, moving with the precision of a soldier who had faced death countless times. His pulse rifle cracked with energy bolts, knocking enemies off their feet. When his weapon jammed, he picked up fallen spears and fought hand to hand. The palace guards hesitated. The attackers were unlike anything they had encountered. They struck silently, coordinated, almost invisible in their speed. Elias's human instincts, his unpredictability, kept Serenia alive. "Captain Kane," Vera shouted, rallying her forces. "We follow your lead." Elias nodded and moved forward. Together they drove the intruders back, forcing them to retreat through the gates. As silence returned, the princess stared at him in awe. You saved everyone," she said, her voice trembling. Elias lowered his weapon. "I just did what needed to be done." But Serenia's eyes shone with a new respect. No guard had ever fought with such courage for her. Not even the most elite soldiers of the Empire. In the following days, Elias adapted to his role as Serenia's protector. He shadowed her in every public appearance, escorted her through the city, and trained her in self-defense. At first, she resisted, unsure of his methods. He taught her simple, practical techniques, emphasizing movement and awareness, rather. The palace of Zarathus felt quieter than usual, but Elias Kane knew that stillness was never a good sign. Weeks had passed since the last attack, and the city seemed calm. Yet the human soldier could feel tension in the air, like a storm waiting to break. He had learned to trust instinct, and his instinct told him danger was close. He patrolled the corridors with Princess Serenia, as he had done countless times before. The princess had grown confident under his guidance, walking with her head high, her eyes alert. Yet she still relied on Elias, and he remained vigilant. "Captain Kane," Serenia said softly, breaking the silence, "do you think it will ever be safe here?" Elias glanced at her, noting the concern in her voice. "Not for long," he replied. "Enemies hide everywhere. Sometimes within the walls you trust the most." Serenia frowned, puzzled. "Within the palace? Surely the Queen's guards are loyal." Elias shook his head. "Loyalty is a word. People have ambitions, grudges, fears. I've seen what that can do in a war zone, and I can sense it even here." They had reached the balcony overlooking the city when a distant figure appeared through the mist. At first it looked like a guard on patrol, but Elias noticed the way the figure moved, hesitant, measured, observing. "Someone is watching," Elias muttered, his hand reaching for his sidearm. Serenia's eyes widened. "Here?" Elias nodded. "Yes, keep close, and do not make sudden moves." The figure retreated into the shadows as they approached. Elias tightened his grip on his weapon. "We are being watched. This is more than curiosity. Someone wants to test us." That night the palace erupted in whispers. Messages of threats, rumors of rebellion, and hints of betrayal spread among the guards and servants. The Queen had summoned her council, and Elias knew he had to be present. The council hall was a massive chamber with high ceilings and glowing crystal chandeliers. The Queen sat at the head, her eyes cold and calculating. "We have enemies," she declared. "Enemies who seek to remove the princess from her place. I will not allow this. Captain Kane, your human eyes may see what others do not. Observe and report." Elias nodded, his mind already racing through possibilities. He had learned that in the Empire, appearances were often lies. A loyal guard could be an enemy in disguise. A smile could hide a dagger. Over the next few days, Elias began to uncover signs of a conspiracy. Small things. A guard taking secret routes, servants whispering in corners, nobles meeting in the dead of night. The threads led him to believe that some of the Empire's own families were planning to overthrow the princess, replacing her with a rival heir. He shared his findings with Serenia. "You must be careful," he warned. "People you trust may not be what they seem. We need to plan, to protect, to stay one step ahead." Serenia nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I never realized how dangerous my position could be," she admitted. "I thought the guards and the palace walls were enough." Elias shook his head. "No walls are enough if betrayal comes from inside." The first major attempt came on a cloudy morning. A trusted noble invited Serenia to inspect a remote armory under the pretense of training exercises. Elias accompanied her, pretending to relax, though his senses were tense. As they reached the armory, the noble subtly signaled 2 assassins hidden among the weapons crates. The human's instincts had taught Elias to notice movements that others would dismiss. Before the assassins could strike, he leaped forward, throwing himself between Serenia and the weapons. Energy bolts fired, metal clanged, and the nobles froze in shock. Elias fought with precise strikes, using every tactic he had honed in war. The princess watched, alarmed but impressed by his skill. Together they drove the attackers out, revealing the noble's betrayal. The revelation shook the palace. Trust was fragile, and now the Empire had a human soldier who had proven himself superior to their own elite warriors. For Elias, it was another confirmation that humans, though underestimated, could change outcomes with courage and strategy. In the days that followed, he trained the princess in new ways. She learned to anticipate attacks, recognize threats, and make quick decisions under pressure. Elias emphasized the importance of observation, thinking, and strategy, tools humans often excelled in where alien armies relied on discipline alone. The Queen, observing the progress from her throne, seemed intrigued. Elias noticed her calculating gaze whenever he was near Serenia. She was a master of politics, and she understood the potential advantage of having a human like him close to her daughter. But danger was never far. Messages arrived warning of nobles preparing to mobilize forces against the palace. Elias knew a larger confrontation was inevitable. He spent hours planning defensive strategies, reinforcing weak points and organizing loyalists. One evening, Serenia approached him quietly in the training hall. "Captain Kane," she said, her voice soft, "do you ever fear that one day we may fail?" Elias looked at her seriously. "Fear is normal," he replied. "But fear alone will not stop them. Courage, planning, and action will, and I will not let anyone harm you as long as I breathe." Serenia studied him, understanding the weight of his words. "I trust you," she said simply. Elias felt a small warmth of gratitude. Trust was rare, especially in a world where betrayal lurked in every shadow. But he had earned it not through words but through deeds. The shadows of betrayal were growing stronger, weaving through the palace and city like a silent threat. Yet Elias Kane, the human soldier, stood ready. He had learned to fight not just for survival, but for a purpose far greater than himself. Protecting Serenia was no longer duty, it was a mission, a responsibility that would define the fate of the princess and the empire alike. And as the twin moons rose high above Zarathis, casting silver light across the crystal towers, Elias knew that the next battle would be the most dangerous yet. For in a world where loyalty was fragile and betrayal waited in every corner, even a human's courage might be tested beyond measure. But he was ready. He always would be. The palace of Zarathis had never felt so tense. Since Elias Kane had begun protecting Princess Serenia, whispers spread among the nobles like wildfire. Some praised the human for his bravery. Others muttered that no outsider should wield influence over the empire's heir. The air was thick with suspicion, and the queen watched it all with a calculating eye. Elias trained in the palace courtyard, practicing with guards who had once doubted him. He moved with precision, deflecting attacks and countering every strike. His human reflexes made him unpredictable, and even the elite Zarathian warriors struggled to anticipate his movements. Serenia observed him from the sidelines. Her own skills had improved, but more importantly, her confidence had grown. Where once she had relied entirely on the palace guards, she now moved with awareness, prepared for danger. Elias had taught her not just to defend, but to think strategically. "Captain Kane," she called, breaking the silence. "The Queen requested your presence. Something important has happened." Elias wiped the sweat from his brow and nodded. "Then we go." "Always ready." They entered the throne room, a massive chamber with walls of polished crystal. Light reflected in brilliant patterns across the floor. At the head of the room, the Queen sat on her throne, her expression unreadable. Guards lined the walls, and nobles whispered nervously among themselves. "Stand forward, human," the Queen commanded. Her voice carried authority that made even seasoned warriors still. Elias stepped forward, careful to keep his posture respectful. "My daughter tells me you have saved her life more than once," the Queen said, her sharp gaze sweeping over him. "You have faced assassins, treacherous nobles, and unknown threats. And yet you survive. You act with honor, courage, and cunning. That is rare." Elias remained silent, waiting for her to continue. The Queen's eyes turned to her daughter. "Serenia, tell me how you feel about this human." Serenia's voice was steady, but her eyes shone with emotion. "Mother, he has protected me when no one else could. His skills and his heart. I trust him." The Queen's expression softened slightly. Then her voice grew firm again. "Very well. You have proven yourself. But trust is not enough. Actions must shape destiny." She leaned forward, her jeweled hands resting on her throne. "From this day forward, Captain Elias Kane will not only serve as protector to my daughter, he will also become her husband." The room fell silent. Nobles gasped, guards froze, and even Elias felt his heart skip a beat. He had expected orders, perhaps recognition, but nothing like this. He looked at Serenia, whose eyes widened in shock. "Mother, what?" Serenia whispered. The Queen's gaze was unwavering. "This alliance will strengthen the empire. Humans are unpredictable, yes, but they possess qualities we can no longer ignore. Courage, loyalty, ingenuity, traits that our own kind sometimes lacks. By joining your lives, you will create a bond that will protect the throne and the people. No force in the empire shall break it." Murmurs erupted among the nobles. Some were outraged, arguing that a human could never be trusted as part of the royal line. Others remained silent, unsure whether to obey or rebel. The queen raised her hand and the chamber fell silent once more. "I have spoken," she said firmly. "Captain Kane is to be treated as husband and protector, not as an outsider. Those who oppose this decree will answer to me." Elias swallowed, trying to process the enormity of the declaration. He had come to Zarathus to survive, to protect, and perhaps to find a way home. The queen's decree still echoed in every corner of the palace, yet it had not silenced the whispers. Some nobles had quietly begun plotting, refusing to accept the idea of a human becoming part of the royal family. They saw Elias Kane not as a protector or ally, but as an intruder, a threat to centuries of tradition. Elias felt it in every glance, every hushed conversation that ceased when he approached. The palace that had once seemed like a sanctuary now felt like a battlefield, where loyalty was fragile and appearances were deceiving. Yet he remained steadfast. His duty was clear: protect Princess Serenia no matter the cost. Serenia had grown stronger, both in skill and confidence. Under Elias's guidance, she could now defend herself against trained guards, anticipate attacks, and think strategically. Yet the burden of her new position weighed heavily on her. She felt the pressure of the queen's decree and the scrutiny of the court. One morning, Elias found her in the palace gardens, staring at the twin moons as if searching for answers in their pale light. "Captain Kane," she said quietly, "do you think the Empire will ever accept this?" Elias studied her for a moment. "Acceptance is not given. It is earned. And some will never see it no matter what we do. What matters is that we stand firm together and prove that courage and loyalty matter more than bloodline." Serenia nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then we face it together." Days later, a messenger arrived with a sealed letter, marked with the insignia of one of the Empire's most influential noble houses. Elias read the message carefully. It was a threat. The noble family intended to challenge the queen's decree openly and would rally forces to demand that Serenia be removed from succession. Or worse, captured. "This is serious," Elias said, his tone grim. "They are not merely unhappy. They are ready to act." Serenia's eyes narrowed. "Then we must prepare. We cannot allow them to harm the palace or the people." Elias nodded. "We cannot. And we must remember that in this fight, it is not just weapons and strength that matter. Strategy and unity are our greatest allies." The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. Loyal guards drilled tirelessly, fortifications were strengthened, and plans were made for every possible scenario. Elias taught the princess how to read enemy movements, how to anticipate deception, and how to use the palace itself as an advantage in battle. But amidst the preparation, Elias faced a personal struggle. The queen's decree had bound him to Serenia, but he had never asked for this role beyond protecting her. Now he had to decide whether to accept a future he had never imagined, a life intertwined with someone he had grown to respect and care for. One evening, Elias walked the palace corridors alone, thinking about the weight of duty and honor. He had faced death countless times in battle, but this was different. This was about choice, about loyalty, trust, and something more personal than orders or survival. Serenia found him there, her expression serious yet gentle. "Captain Kane," she said softly, "I know this is not what you expected. I never wanted you to be forced into this." Elias met her gaze. "I did not come here for this. I only wanted to survive, but now, I see that my choice matters. Protecting you is no longer just duty. It is something I believe in, something I choose." Serenia reached out and placed her hand lightly on his arm. "Then we will face it together. Whatever comes, we are united." The next challenge came sooner than expected. The rebellious nobles gathered their forces outside the capital, amassing soldiers and mercenaries ready to challenge the queen's rule. The city buzzed with tension, citizens hiding in their homes while rumors of war spread through the streets. Elias and Serenia moved quickly, coordinating defenses with the queen's loyalists. Every gate, corridor, and tower was prepared. Traps were set, reinforcements positioned, and communication lines secured. Yet even with meticulous planning, Elias knew that the battle would test more than their skills. It would test their courage and their bond. The first strike came at dawn. Cavalry units charged the outer walls, followed by heavily armed infantry. The rebels believed that the human captain would be a weakness, but they underestimated him. Elias directed the defenders with precision, combining human ingenuity with Zerathian discipline. He ordered feints, traps, and counterattacks that caught the attackers off guard. The rebels, confident at first, were forced to retreat in confusion. Serenia fought alongside him, wielding her training with skill and determination. Her movements were deliberate and strategic, reflecting the lessons Elias had taught her. Together, they became a force that no one had anticipated. Human adaptability paired with Zerathian tradition. As the battle raged, Elias realized that victory would not come from brute strength alone. He had to inspire loyalty among those who doubted him, to show that courage and honor transcended bloodlines. His actions, his choices, and his unwavering commitment began to sway the morale of the palace defenders. By midday, the rebels had been pushed back. Their forces fractured, their confidence shattered by the unexpected strength and strategy of the human-led defenders. The queen observed from her balcony, a faint smile on her lips. Elias had proven himself, not just as a soldier but as a leader capable of influencing the course of the empire. After the battle, Elias stood amidst the rubble of the outer gates. Serenia approached, her armor scratched and her face flushed from exertion, but her eyes shone with determination. "You were incredible," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "Not just in battle, but in everything you did. You changed the outcome." Elias shook his head. "I did my part. But we did this together. You were brave, focused, and unafraid. That made the difference." Serenia smiled, a quiet warmth in her expression. "Then I am glad you are here. Not because of the Queen's decree, but because I know you stand with me. Because you choose to." Elias felt a deep sense of fulfillment. For the first time, he understood that his presence in Zarathis was more than survival or duty. It was a choice, an honor, and a responsibility that he embraced willingly. That night, as the city settled into uneasy calm, Elias and Serenia walked the palace corridors, speaking quietly about strategy, loyalty, and the challenges ahead. The Queen's decree had set events in motion, and there was no turning back. Yet despite the uncertainty and danger, they both knew one truth: together, they were stronger than any force that threatened the empire. Elias Kane had begun as a stranger from the stars, a survivor in a strange world. Now he was more than that. He was a protector, a partner, and a symbol of courage that inspired those around him. And as the moons rose over Zarathis, casting silver light across the palace towers, he knew that the battles yet to come would test them in ways beyond strength or skill. But he was ready, and he would face them, by choice, with honor and with Serenia at his side. The morning sun rose over the palace of Zarathis, casting golden light across the crystal towers. The city seemed calm, yet Elias Kane knew better. The rebellion had been only partially crushed, and whispers of dissent still lingered in shadowed corridors. The nobles who had opposed the Queen's decree were regrouping, preparing for one final attempt to seize power. Elias stood at the balcony of the royal chamber, surveying the city below. Princess Serenia joined him, her eyes alert, her hands resting lightly on the balcony rail. Though young, she had grown into her role as heir, her confidence tempered by the lessons of danger and strategy Elias had taught her. "Captain Kane," she said, breaking the quiet, "do you think this will ever end?" Elias shook his head slowly. "Not completely. There will always be those who challenge authority, but we can meet them head-on, and we can protect the people who depend on us. That is what matters." The Queen entered quietly, her gaze sharp as ever. "The time has come," she said. "The rebels have gathered their forces outside the city. If they wish to challenge the throne, they will do so now. You two must stand together. The Empire watches, and so does history." Elias and Serenia nodded. Their bond had grown deeper than protector and princess. It had become a partnership, built on trust, respect, and shared courage. As the sun climbed higher, the rebels marched toward the palace gates. Cavalry thundered across the outer courtyards, and infantry followed in precise formation. Their banners fluttered in the wind, signaling their intent to claim the throne. Elias moved among the defenders, issuing orders and positioning units with careful precision. His human experience in war, adaptability, improvisation, and reading the enemy, gave the loyalists an edge. He knew how to exploit weaknesses, how to use the palace itself as a weapon, and how to anticipate the rebels' moves before they acted. Serenia rode alongside him, Her newfound combat skills evident in every decision, she directed archers to strategic points, reinforced vulnerable gates, and coordinated the palace defenders with clarity and authority. Where once she had relied entirely on others, she now led with confidence and intelligence. The battle began with a thunderous clash. Cavalry met the palace walls and infantry assaulted the gates. But Elias had prepared for this. Traps slowed the attackers. Hidden barricades funneled them into narrow corridors, and energy cannons fired with precision. The rebels had expected chaos, but instead they found order and human ingenuity. Elias leapt into the thick of the battle, his pulse rifle blazing, his movements swift and unpredictable. He deflected attacks, protected key positions, and moved.